And also, we have the support of Laura Ingraham. She's the editor-in-chief of LifeSet and Fox News contributor as well. Laura, what'd you make of the president's speech last night? I know, he ran on that Afghanistan was a disaster, and if he was president, he'd probably do something different than he did last night.
Yeah, it was a change, well, no doubt about it. I think he got into the presidency. He's getting a lot of advice from his generals and others. I understand Steve Hadley, former Bush administration official in the original ramp up to the Iraq war, he was thrilled about this, and he was, I guess, giving his advice for whatever reason. The president delivered a great speech. I think there were moments, especially at the beginning, when he talked about unity of purpose for this country and how an informed, strong patriotism, regardless of our differences, our political differences, we come from different backgrounds, races, creeds, that belief in this nation and the goodness of this nation is so critical in moving forward on any front, domestic or foreign. And I thought that was beautifully written and well delivered by the president, and so that was very inspiring. I am not a big fan of a surge of troops in Afghanistan personally. I think it's very hard to imagine how we win a peace, a lasting peace in Afghanistan if we couldn't do it with 100,000 troops. Now we're going to have about 13,000 troops, it looks like, in Afghanistan. I really loved what Jed Babin wrote yesterday. He wrote a great piece saying, look, unless we're going to confront the Salafist Islamist ideology that is being fomented and fueled and funded by Pakistan and others in the region, including Saudi Arabia, unless we're willing to actually combat that in a significant, meaningful way, what does a victory look like in Afghanistan? And I guess we're going to be there through our lifetime. I mean, that's clear. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be in Afghanistan until we probably, take the long dirt nap ourselves. And is that really what the American people thought they were getting? They thought they were going to get drain the swamp, not clear the desert.
Laura, I said this in the first hour of the show. I remember talking on Outnumbered about this because I was saying we should listen to the experts. And Leah Gabriel, who fought for our country, she works at Fox News. She stopped me in the hallways and she said, I appreciate you saying that. And I'd only heard that talking point from someone else. I can't take credit for that. But she said, thank you for saying that because these are the experts, the generals who have actually gone out there on the front lines and fought. And she said, I know because I fly a plane in the military. She said, I know what to expect when you're at war. So we really need to look to the generals, to the experts, when it comes to making these types of decisions.
I think that's true, and they're great patriots, and they want a fantastic outcome. We all know that. The question is, what does victory ultimately look like? America's interest in Afghanistan is truly preventing another 9/11. Absolutely. Will this residual force, which is apparently going to be focused mostly on training, will that be enough to prevent Afghanistan from becoming another 9/11? And how do we continue to keep the American people supportive of this war effort that is now in its 17th year? 17 years, 2,500 lives, almost $1 trillion. It was the Soviet Union's graveyard. I don't think Americans want this to be our graveyard. But I think he gave a great speech, and I think he's making the best assessment that he can with the information that he has. I'm always worried about how we're going to pay for it. How does this ever end?
That's right.
How is this draining the swamp back home?
So, Laura, everything you said is solid. I mean, no one says, well, where did she pull that up from? However, the thing that I thought was very intriguing about this whole thing is that he said, I sat behind the desk, I had one opinion. And then I sat there and I realized what my options are. And he drilled his generals to come up with a better plan and convince him. And in the end, he said, I had to make a decision. The tone of that, bringing us through his own process, is something brand new. He's never really done that before. And I thought to myself, wow, I know what he meant. I know what he had to go through, and now I know where he got to, how he got to the place he is right now.
That's a great point. And I think, again, going back to what we just talked about, Pakistan is the problem here.
And he said it. He said that.
Yeah, he did say that, but calling out Pakistan versus they're a nuclear state. How are we going to get an Islamist, Salafist, devoted government, which I'm sorry, it is. They're going to suddenly be our allies, and what Mike Pence just told you, Ainsley, is that we're going to have a durable partner a durable ally in Afghanistan for peace. How many of us look at the Afghan government today and see a durable ally for peace? I don't see it. I talked to a lot of troops who had 4, 5 deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the guys who are on the ground versus the generals who are running the effort, they have a very different opinion of Afghanistan.
But what do we hear different, Laura? He brought up India. I know it's a powder keg. But remember, India said, I'll give you some troops. And Pakistan said, whatever you do, don't take the Indian troops. Meanwhile, India goes, no, I'm a democracy. I see with America. I'm going to get behind you. Now he's going to say, yeah, you don't want to cooperate? I think I'm going to go to India, who actually has the money, has the economy, and has the troop force.
You're right, and that's a different tact. And I think, look, India could be a good hedge against China. Remember, China doesn't fire a shot in the region. China, doesn't have big military interventions. China's getting richer and more powerful year after year, and they want to be the dominant global military force. They already have a bigger standing army than ours. They're already stealing a lot of our technology. We have to be very careful how we partner with other countries in the region to be a ballast against China. I'm always looking for that pivot to Asia that every president promises us. I think Donald Trump has done a great job in standing up to what China ultimately wants to do. We have to keep our eye on that ball as well.
Hey, Laura, let's talk a little bit about politics. For the people who voted for Donald Trump because he said, he's going to drain the swamp, not the desert, as you said, and thought that he was going to take us in a different direction that wouldn't wind up being, apparently, the road ahead. What does this do for his core voter?
Well, I think he has to continue to speak to the American people about these issues. Remember, there was a period of time in the Bush administration where they didn't really talk much about Afghanistan or Iraq. And he has to keep this conversation going. This was a great moment for him last night because it was a formal address. He was explaining his thought process. I might not agree with it. I think a lot of Americans do not agree with it. But nevertheless, it was a serious, sober address. I want to see him do that on a lot of issues, on immigration, on trade, on race, on economic renewal, put pressure on Ben Sasse, Jeff Flake, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Cory Gardner, you all know who you are, to give him a bill he can sign on tax reform. Imagine if he gave that type of address on the need to renew our economy, to help all those minorities who can't get jobs today renew our economy with tax reform and a real shot in the arm of this economy. That would be really powerful, and that's really in line with draining the swamp, making America great again. So this speech, I think, was a great beginning of that national conversation that he needs to keep having. He's very powerful when he goes right to the people.
Laura, you mentioned Senator Lindsey Graham. He came out and said it was a solid plan. They haven't agreed on everything. They ran against each other, but he is strong on national security. He said it was a solid plan. And then Marco Rubio, we've been putting up his statement throughout the show of how positive he thought the speech was last night. Is the Republican Party starting to unify?
No, well, no, I don't think so. I mean, those guys are for military intervention more often than not. They're more neoconservatives. They're not populist, more nationalist conservatives. So they love anytime we're going to deploy a lot of troops. They're going to be pretty happy probably. So that doesn't surprise me. They need to get him a tax bill. They need to get Obamacare repealed and replaced. That is what we campaigned on. They need to fund the wall. They can't hold him hostage on giving amnesty to millions of illegals to fund the wall. Donald Trump now has a moment to pivot away from the problems of the last 2 weeks, continue that great tone he had last night about unifying the country across racial, ethnic, religious, and socioeconomic lines. Keep that tone up. Let's make America great again. Let's do it really positively. I think he has a great moment here. I think we're going to begin to see it in Arizona tonight.
I think so, too. And he's going to be effective, and the speech works if we get a Russia story in the Washington Post tomorrow. Because every time he gets on a roll, they come up with some type of Russia
bingo! Great point.
limerick that we all have to digest.
Yeah, terrific point.
All right. Laura, thank you very much for joining us.
Great to see you guys.